The My Mumble podcast is supported by the Limassol Therapy Center, a place where children, teenagers and adults can find support and guidance through psychology, speech therapy, occupational therapy and special education services, always with care and respect. For more information, visit limassoltherapycenter.com or call 25 33 33 75. Nobody tells you postpartum can be the hardest part of motherhood, and yet too many of us step into it without the knowledge and support we really need. We Are Mamas is here to change that. From trusted information and practical tools to curated products for recovery and well-being, they give you the confidence to take care of yourself as you care for your baby. You can visit www.wiggleci.com/wearemamas and start your postpartum journey with support, not struggle. Also, there is a 20% discount for all you listeners. Just use the code MAMMAMU, MAMMAMU. Hello, I am Eleni and this is the My Mumble podcast, an online space I created in 2019 in an attempt to bring various voices to the surface, to add opinions, experiences and knowledge to the public discourse around matters that are close to the hearts of Cypriots. The Cyprus Problem is one of those matters. Every time I have touched upon the issue of the Cyprus problem on the podcast, I have done so through a different lens than the norm, than the more political one we are used to. I go in from a female point of view, and more importantly, from a mother's point of view. As a mother of 3 boys, my worries range from what they're being taught in the education system to what will happen if a war was to break out and they would be called upon to kill or be killed. So when I sat down to watch the documentary The Divided Island, before sitting down for an interview with the director, Cey Sesiguzel, I cried a lot. I cried for my country, for my people. I cried because so much of what was presented in that documentary echoes today's reality of division and hate. It's as though history is repeating itself. So today on the podcast, as I said, Jay and I talk about the documentary, The Divided Island, which brings the Cyprus problem back into focus, revealing untold stories and unravelling the intricate history that still reverberates today. Jay, like me, was born in the UK to Cypriot parents, and like me, he was always curious about the road that led to the invasion in 1974. We talk about what he and his co-producer Andreas Tokalos learned when making this documentary, the feedback they received, and the trauma that is ever so prominent on both sides. A link to the documentary is available in the show notes, and I would urge you to watch it. Watch it with family members of all ages. Watch it. My email, if you want to contact me, is eleni@georgiesmummy.com, and my social media handles on Instagram and Facebook are Georgie's Mummy. Now, on with Jay, on with the show. Jay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the old town of Nicosia. Though after watching the documentary last night, there were a lot of shots of old Nicosia.
There is, and it's a place that for me is so symbolic of the divide and division of the island. It's in your face here in Old Nicosia. So I wanted to make sure that the world got a bit of that texture and flavour of Old Nicosia in the film.
Yeah. I watched the documentary last night. One of my friends who's also seen it, she said, you should have let a few days between now and interviewing Jay, but I'm like, no, let's go in now that it's raw. Cried my eyes out last night for various reasons. But, you know, when you watch the raw history of what happened to us, and it seems so far, far away, and then you see the footage, you listen to the people talking, and, you know, you just get that lingering why. Why are we here? How did we do this? And why are we continuously doing this to ourselves? So let's go back to the beginning and your why. Why did you do this documentary?
So as a child, I used to come back and forth to Cyprus, family holidays, obviously to the north where my family now resides. Loved it. Loved coming here as a child. You know, just felt the connection of, you know, back home in the UK, didn't feel English, knew I was Cypriot. And when I come to Cyprus, I felt that Cypriotness. But when I would go back to the UK and I'd talk with my Greek Cypriot mates around, you know, our summer holidays, and they were like, yeah, we were in Cyprus as well. And it was like, yeah, but you was on the other side, and the other side's got a divide, and there's a crossing point, and one side's recognised, one side isn't. And all of these questions started coming up as teenagers. And our group back home is a really mixed group of Cypriots and non-Cypriots as well, but predominantly Cypriots because I'm from North London. And we just started having these chats as teenagers, like, I don't get it. How comes, you know, this division happened? Your story is different to our story. They don't quite match up. You know, why are you only talking about 74? The Cyprus Problem didn't start in 74. And, you know, just the polarized historical views on everything.
So you got the impression that, I mean, because you didn't go through the education system that we did. I was born in England, started public school when I was year 4. So I got that indoctrination. You didn't. So did you notice that it was, these were messages coming from your families respectively? Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, giving different messages and recollections of what had happened?
To be honest, and I think this is probably common for a lot of Turkish Cypriots, many Turkish Cypriots in the diaspora in the UK don't really talk about what happened. So I did ask family, like, what happened, you know, what was your experience, etc. But most of the stuff I just went online and started reading myself, looking at, you know, books from historians like James Kerr-Lindsay and Androkos Varnavas, who featured in the documentary, and just doing my own research, you know. So it was more about finding a diverse viewpoints historically, Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, non-Cypriots, and kind of teaching the history to myself.
Okay. All right. So, and how did the documentary come around? What was it that set it off?
So I'm a filmmaker. That's what I studied at film school. And when I graduated film school, me and my best friend and co-producer, Andreas Tokolos, set up Too Fresh, which is a video production company. We do corporate commercial videos for big brands in the UK. But after sort of 15 years of doing corporate commercial work, you know, I turned around and I said to him, look, bro, we have to do something for our ancestral home. There's not enough content out there that looks at the conflict and the division from both sides, that sort of deals with the nuance of it and, you know, puts the trauma that everyone went through side by side to hopefully create a bit of humanity and empathy, which I think is lacking in the world right now, not just in the Cyprus conflict.
Yeah. Are you aware of the current affairs in Cyprus and what's going on with the rise of the far right?
I am aware, you know, and the rise of the far right is not just a Cypriot issue. It's an issue globally. In the UK, we're having
so sad
demonstrations and marches.
People keep saying to me, because, you know, I've got a lot of friends and family in the UK, and they're just saying that I'm disappointed and shocked, and, you know, all I feel is just sadness.
It is sad. It is sad, and that's why we need content that combats any extremist content, and that's what we believe the divided island is. And that's what we'll continue doing. That's what I feel as a responsibility as a filmmaker, and that's my medium, and I'm sure you feel that responsibility with your podcasting.
Yeah, I do, but I also feel that it's very difficult for content like mine that's very pro women's rights, pro LGBTQ, pro listening to immigrant stories and giving them some visibility. It's very difficult to exist in this media landscape right now, which is just mainly right-wing media, and the funding as well that goes into right-wing media, and the funding that's on the left or in the centre is almost non-existent.
I can feel your pain. It was the same with this film. We were not funded by a state or institution. It was mostly self-funded and with support of some of our business contacts and backers. But we have to go through that pain because putting a different message out there is so important, and well done to you for doing that.
Thank you, and same to you. Right, before we get into the documentary, without obviously giving away too much, I wanted to ask you about the footage that was used, and generally how easy or difficult was it to come across footage and stories and experiences firsthand from those days, those years?
So I'll talk about two parts. First, the archival footage, which we have content from the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. We also have photos from before that, which we animated. The most difficult part of the footage was actually finding the money to pay for the licensing of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we didn't go through either state. We didn't work with the Republic of Cyprus or the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus to get the access to those archives. We went with British PAFE, who have so much content on Cyprus. Obviously, They were here. So they have a lot of news reports, etc. So we went through their archives, done thorough research. What do we think would work best for the film to give the context of it? And we licensed that footage. But yeah, the hardest part was actually funding it.
Why was it a choice not to go through the states of either republic?
Yeah, it was a choice. We wanted to, really control the integrity of this film in terms of not being influenced by any state, any political party. This was independently made with our voices as Cypriots from the diaspora.
Was there any footage or recollections that struck you, that stuck with you, that you came across when you were digging?
All of it. All of it is hard. You wouldn't believe how many hours I've spent editing this film, shooting this film, touring the UK, doing Q&As, film festivals. And every single time I get emotional watching it, and that's because we went through a really horrible period for many years. So it's hard content. But what is amazing about that footage is these are real people. They're not, they're just our parents, our grandparents' generations. So when you see that pain and suffering that they went through, it helps, I think, tap into our core humanity and realize it's just human suffering, not Greek Cypriot or Turkish Cypriot suffering. Yeah.
And also there were a lot of images that were familiar. Growing up in Cyprus, watching state-run channels, news, women crying, people dying. We're used to that. What we're not used to, and what obviously our education system kind of leaves out on this side, is the Turkish Cypriot pain and their story and their history, and specifically in the 60s. Was that why it was important to you to focus on that part? Did you feel, or did you know that story was lacking in visibility?
Yeah, totally. Look, growing up in London, we're still privy to seeing what the state media does in the Republic of Cyprus, and that is echoed with lobby groups in the UK. And everything is focused around 1974, and I'm not trying to at all diminish 1974, but it doesn't make sense to start the Cyprus discussion at 1974. There was so much before that. And that's why it was key for us to have, obviously, a big focus of 1974 in the documentary, but to give an equal amount to what happened in the 60s and the 50s. And I'm pretty proud of the balance that we had covering all of those periods.
Yeah. How easy or, again, difficult was it to find people to speak about what was happening during those years?
So me and Andy basically sent out a questionnaire to many Facebook groups. We knew that an older demographic usually lives on Facebook.
Yep.
And I say lives on Facebook, I don't mean that.
Well, no, they do actually, Jay.
Maybe they do. But it was effective. We had hundreds and hundreds of people submit their stories. But not all of them wanted to be on camera. They just wanted to share their stories, which was great for our research. But then we selected the ones that wanted to be on camera, had Zoom interviews with them. And then we basically cast the people that we wanted to feature in the documentary. So actually, like, there's hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of stories that are not featured that could be featured. But we wanted to include the ones that we felt were right, that maybe stories that hadn't been heard. And we wanted people that were brave enough to share it. And these people were brave enough to share their story with the world.
Yeah. I mean, listening to you say that there were hundreds and hundreds of people who were willing to tell the story, I did express some shock, but at the same time, I'm thinking now, doesn't that just go to show that these people were never given the chance to talk about their experiences and what they went through?
100%. And that's one of the things that actually gives me goosebumps, is because I had people coming up to me after the screenings in the UK saying, now I know why my dad was traumatized the way he was, or why he was an alcoholic, or why he couldn't love us, and why he would never speak about 74 or the 60s. And, these are the reasons why we wanted to make the film, because I don't feel like Cypriots on either side of the divide have had much therapy to deal with the trauma that they went through. Yeah.
The trauma therapist that you had on the documentary was absolutely amazing, the way he articulated things as well. Where did you find that guy? Excellent guy.
Yeah, so Tom Fortismeyer, really talented guy. Actually, I met him in North London. He does a lot of work with Cypriots that are struggling.
Oh, he does? Okay.
He does.
Because he did seem very familiar with the story.
He does, and we spent hours talking, and he said most of these people have never had any therapy, and it's the first time that they're ever explaining that they had a gun pointed to their head, or they remember soldiers kicking them out of their village, or whatever it was. And if that happens to you as a 6-year-old girl or a 12-year-old boy, this affects you to your core, and then that effect that's had on you as a parent then goes onto your children, our generation, and that's where they talk about the generational trauma. So I wanted an element of the film to be cathartic for people. Like, I don't want people to just watch a film and say, oh, that's sad. Or, I wanted, maybe actually by watching a piece of art like The Divided Island, people will heal slightly just by having a good cry.
Yeah. Just by recognizing that, yes, in fact, what you went through, what our families went through was traumatic. The historian, James Colinzi.
Yep.
Excellent guy.
He is.
Again, where'd you find him?
So he's one of the people where, when I was doing my studying on the film, because I've pretty much been researching this for about 20 years, he's written a number of books on the Cyprus conflict, and I wanted to include a British political scientist or expert that was pretty much neutral down the line. And that was important to me. And I think James Colinzi's work is pretty much down the line neutral.
What was it that drew him to the Cyprus issue?
So I can't speak to too much about his personal connection.
But what you got from him?
What I do know is that I'm pretty sure he's a resident here. He lives here. And,
does he?
Yeah, and I think, he might even be married to a Cypriot, but I don't know the full ins and outs of his personal life.
Okay.
But he's not just an expert in Cyprus, actually. He's an expert in many countries that have division.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all of the countries around the world that have division, he's written books on a lot of them.
Okay, right. And I've just taken a mental note to go and find this guy and bring him here. Thank you for that. Right. Was there anything that you learned during the journey making this documentary that you had no clue about? Was there something that shook you and was just eye-opening or just a complete surprise?
Look, I was very well researched. I mean, I'm happy to sit and talk about the history of Cyprus with anyone because I've researched it quite a bit as a filmmaker. But I guess the thing that shook me the most, maybe I won't say surprised me, but just had a profound impact on me, was the interview with Christina Pavlou, who talks about the tragic loss of her dad and her brother by Turkish Cypriots from her village who were members of the TMT and not the Turkish army. And, you hear about these atrocities, by soldiers, etc. But, to hear that these were Turkish Cypriots from her village that did these atrocities, it's a hard pill to swallow. It's a hard pill to swallow. You think, how can you do this to people in your village? But then what's fascinating about that is, they had their parents murdered by AOKA fascists a decade before, and then that's how they got in this spiral of hate and
tit for tat
revenge. So then, and she says it eloquently in the film. She says, hate breeds hate.
Yeah.
And hurt people.
Yeah. And her last words, Jay, she said, "I hope my family is the last to suffer." She's a person who's gone through so much suffering. And she doesn't want tit for tat. She doesn't want revenge. She wants to be the last who will cry and suffer.
Many people who actually lost loved ones have the same feeling. That I can tell you that from experience. The people that, let's say, lost land seem to be angrier than the people that lost loved ones.
Wow. That says a lot, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Christina Pavlou. I want to mention the other woman in the documentary, Sylvia Zachariou, who, don't want to give too much away, but as a mum, as a woman, she shared her story, which is very, very painful to hear. Without giving away too much yet, how did you come across Sylvia, and how did you sit through that interview? I mean, I interview people all the time. I've been doing it for years. Having someone opposite you who's experienced so much loss, how do you deal with that? And how was she as a person as well?
So Sylvia is a wonderful lady, and I have to deal with all my interviews with the right amount of nuance as a director in terms of how I question them, a good duty of care, because they're dealing with sharing personal traumatic stories. But with Sylvia and Sherife Gül as well, they are the grandmothers of two of my good mates.
Oh.
Yes, so it adds even more responsibility and weight to deal with it with the right care.
Yeah.
So both my buddies were like, Yaya and Nene are happy to be in the video, in the documentary, and they trusted us to share their story, and I'm so grateful for it. And you deal with it just by having empathy and being a human being, and if there's anything too much, you can stop at any time. And but both are amazing women, and amazing women are a feature of the documentary. We have quite a few amazing women in the documentary, and I wanted to give them the platform to, let's say, give their loved ones a legacy and almost immortalize them with this content.
Yeah.
They won't be forgotten.
Yeah, no, they won't. Since you just spoke about the women and how prominent they are in their narratives in this documentary, you did touch upon the rapes that took place in 1974. I don't know if you had learned more about what was going on in Cyprus with Skevi Guguma's work as well. She is like a women-led organization, and she, as a politician, brought to the forefront the stories of women who were raped in 1974 on both sides. The one thing that I did want from the documentary was a bit more on that.
I understand that. It's...
Because this is also, I was going to say that this is also a narrative that we've only just become familiar with in the last 5, maybe 10 years
really?
here
Wow.
in Cyprus.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, look, in the 70s, and it weren't just in Cyprus, anywhere where there was a military conflict or a war, let's take Vietnam, for example, you know, unfortunately, sexual violence and rape was just a key feature.
It's a weapon of war, Jay.
It's a weapon of
It
war.
really is, yeah.
It's a weapon of war, and you know, we're not just talking about the 70s. It's still happening now as a weapon of war.
Yeah.
So it was important to mention it. Look, we had to find the right balance with talking about all the atrocities to the right level. I mean, so whether there was sexual violence like that or the mass killings that happened to the 3 villages in the Mesarea, it couldn't be all trauma. We needed the last half an hour of the film to at least show some element of hope as well. So these are all important subjects that I believe should have documentaries about them specifically.
I was going to say, I think that every single issue that we've even just touched upon now and every single scene of that documentary could lead into a whole documentary on its own.
That's my dream, by the way. Like,
is it?
Yeah, I would hope Netflix drop me a ton of money to do a 10-part documentary on Cyprus and we can expand.
Have you tried contacting them?
We did. But we got a bit of pushback because of the political sensitivity of this film.
Elaborate on that, please, if you can. Sorry to put you in that position, but that just annoyed me. What did they mean by that?
Look, it's not a commercial film in a sense of a Hollywood blockbuster about superheroes, is it? This is a subject matter that is sensitive, that is challenged, that you have propaganda on both sides of the island. And I'm assuming they don't want lobby groups knocking at their door and giving them a headache. So sometimes it's safer not to show films like this and to show films about superheroes. Even though we love them.
We do love
them. For escapism.
We do love them. And I have to say that I watched the latest Superman and I absolutely loved it.
It was good fun.
I enjoyed
my
God.
It as well. It was good fun.
You know, it was almost like it was old school Superman.
Yeah, I agree. It was good fun. It had that 80s, 90s vibe about it. It didn't take itself too seriously. But yet, it also did have some underlying political messages in there.
It did. Which is why a lot of people called it woke. Let's not get into that, though. Yeah. Having just talked about the rapes, and that's something that maybe you would like to go and do another documentary or piece on that. Are there other aspects that you would have wanted to include in the documentary or you're planning to include in other work?
There are. And one of the things that really hit home is I don't feel like we featured enough of the good stories, the stories of people saving each other. There's a little bit in there, but there are so many stories where extremists were trying to kill one another and people were being saved by the other side's community. And I think we need to bring these stories to life because, again, we show the humanity, we show the empathy, and it's not just, oh, this side done this violence, you done that. Like, there were so many stories where people did good for each other. So that's an area that I'd like to explore. And just the general time before the Troubles, like the love stories. There's plenty of love stories. There's plenty of intermixing. Like the history of Cyprus is fascinating. I could go back 1,000 years and make content about this stuff. It's just, I love it.
Wow. Love stories and saving each other. That's something that you really don't hear about, do you?
Well, they were more prevalent than violence. The violent stories are the ones that are in the media.
Because that's sensationalism, isn't it? That's what sells more than anything.
Yeah, I can't remember what film it was. They said, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's generally how mainstream media works. That's why it's important to have alternative media like this.
Yes, agreed. So you spoke about, Netflix, and let's get this on Netflix, but leave Netflix to one side. This film should be shown in schools. It should be shown in Cyprus, here where it happened. Are there plans to do that? I know that you had one this Saturday. I wasn't able to come, but are you planning on pushing this documentary to be seen by more eyes locally?
Of course, yeah. We had...
And have you had any pushback?
Yes, we have. So, I mean, we had, in the UK, we released in UK cinemas up and down the country over 40 screenings. In terms of cinema and Amazon Prime in the UK, we've had over 40,000 people watch this film. Now, that's still a drop in the ocean in terms of the amount of Cypriots there are in the world. In Cyprus, we've had pushback. We had discussions with major cinema chains on both sides. Even though we sold out Odeon Cineworld Cinemas in the UK, we haven't been able to get distribution in Cyprus cinemas. That is probably because maybe the film isn't of their political leaning. It could be the case. That's my assumption why we've had pushback on both sides. And same from the mainstream media in terms of the TV stations. Again, we're not having much luck, so we're having to distribute it independently. And people can watch it on Vimeo On Demand or some other online platforms. But we'll keep knocking on that door because we want academic screenings. We want cinema screenings. We want to go into schools and talk about it. I will continue pushing this message and hard, pretty much for the rest of my life.
Yeah. Have you had any feedback from young men? I'm always interested to hear what because, they are kind of like the epicenter of everything that's going on right now with the far right. And we talk often about the radicalization of men and young men and boys as well. So have you had any discussions or feedback from young men?
So young men tend to be the best trolls online. So most of the abuse that, say, me and Andy have got via TikTok or Instagram or Facebook has been pretty much from young men. But I don't want to paint out all young men. I mean, look, the people that come to the screening, that were brave enough to come and watch the screening in these mixed bi-communal screenings in the UK, we had so many people come up to us, thank us for making this film. And even though they'll say, look, my dad was pro-enosis, my dad was AOKB, but now I see the whole situation totally different. And just to get one person to say that is super important. So that's why we'll keep pushing this message out there. It's hard, because if your mum and dad and your nan and your granddad, these are people that you love, have preached a bit of hate to you, constantly through your life, and your media has as well, you can understand why people fall into the wrong ideologies. So sometimes it takes a piece of art like this or a podcast or something to change someone's mind, and maybe not change their mind completely, but just move them slightly away, move them closer to the center than anything. And we have had feedback. I even had feedback not just from young men, but someone in their 60s. He said to me again, he goes, look, my family, all hardcore people on the right, it's changed me. This film has changed me.
Yeah. Could you speak a bit about maybe the far right in the north? Because, I mean, I know a lot about what's going on here. You have this whole Eo Gavita Xanachtiba. You have a political party now that is rising fast and at a very scary rate. You're hearing about people, that eleftheria y thanatos, freedom or death, that's all coming back now. Does the same apply on the other side as well?
Look, I mean, I don't live here to fully hear and understand those type of details. But from what I hear from cousins and family, it's very much a similar trend to the UK and to the South here. But look, it comes back to, a lack of hope, constant feeding of hate.
I think it's lack of communication, Jay. I really do. And I mean, even someone was saying in the documentary, I think it was Sesiguzel, the reporter, that, the borders have been open for 20 years now. We know what's on the other side. I remember, and I mentioned this to you earlier about monsters on the other side. I remember I think it was like 2000, 2001, and while I was writing my dissertation on the conflict. And, I would come across, when I was doing my research, of accounts of monsters living over there or devils. This Greek Cypriot kid finally got the chance to meet a Turkish Cypriot kid, and they were saying that they were looking for the horns and the tail.
That's crazy. That is crazy in the modern world. That is crazy.
But, so now it's been 20 years, the borders are open. We've seen what's over there. It ain't monsters and it's not devils. I've personally, as I've said to you, my kids go to school with Turkish Cypriot kids. Their friends are Turkish Cypriots. And I've said this on the podcast, said it to you earlier. People probably get tired of me saying it, but I had my teenage son ask me 5 years ago, if a war was to break out, does that mean that I have to kill my friend?
Yeah, it's a shocking situation for a young child to have to ask their mother that. But what I would bring it to reality is that those same questions would have been happening in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Young boys would have been asking that to their mums and dads. So that's happened. So we need to make sure that those questions stop getting asked in a way.
But it just goes to show, Jay, that we're not creating an environment of safety. And when your parents don't feel safe, as you said in the documentary, as it was said in the documentary yesterday, how are your kids going to feel safe? So my boys right now, 7, 9, and almost 14, almost 15 years old, clearly don't feel safe. Expecting at any minute, that something's going to erupt and they're going to have to take bare arms and go off shooting their mates.
Well, Yasha Ismailoglu, he says it, one day we were friends and then the next day we weren't. And it traumatized him that he had to fight and kill other human beings. It traumatized him that he had to do that. And this is no laughing matter. This is serious stuff. As human beings, we need to make sure that those traumas are not recycled. Everyone can make the difference in their own little way. You're doing that now.
Yeah.
You do that with what you teach your kids. I do that with my skill set, which is filmmaking. Sesiguzel does it amazingly by helping families of the missing find their loved ones. Kemal and Andromahia doing it. So we can all play our part in improving that narrative.
Yeah. But going back to what I said about the communication as well, it's like sitting down, meeting people. And, and this can apply to any group that's being targeted right now, whether it's LGBTQ or immigration or women. When you sit down with a real person, a human being, and you realize that they go through exactly the same shit that you go through, borders break down, walls break down. And I feel that what the far right is trying to do is to avoid this happening, avoid communication between people, create polarization as much as possible, create division as much as possible. And of course, do not educate yourself.
You're spot on. You're spot on. And we're seeing that in the UK with the demonization of migrants at the minute. And I have talks with people and they're like, yeah, but we do have a migrant issue. I'm like, really? Explain to me, because just because the media is bashing it over your head, it doesn't mean it's true to the extent that they're saying it's true.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's unfortunately, and it sounds, I don't want to come across as arrogant when saying it, but when you don't work in the media, it's hard to understand how the media uses manipulation.
I sometimes when I talk to people, I feel like I'm speaking a different language to them, because they're not aware of how the media machine works. And, you're sitting there explaining something that to you is just completely black and white. And they're like, but I'm not seeing that.
Yeah. And that's hard.
It's really hard. And it's also the reason why I don't know what's going on in the UK, but here in Cyprus, we are pushing for media literacy as much as possible.
Not just media literacy, but media diversity and media funding. So, different viewpoints get the same amount of exposure, so that we don't live in an echo chamber.
Yeah, that's true. So what can we expect from you? Because I am expecting something from you, Jay. Don't tell me you just made that magnificent piece of art and you're just leaving it there. So what can we expect from you?
Look,
without giving away too much if you don't want to.
No. I appreciate the enthusiasm to see more of our work. We are just getting started, and The Divided Island is our first piece of work. I'm a 38-year-old filmmaker, still got a lot of years in me as a filmmaker. I want to be making films for the next 30 years. So we've got some new projects. Some are Cypriot related, some aren't. But in terms of the Cyprus issue, we do have a feature film we are developing. So scripted, not documentary, that's set in the 1950s.
In Cyprus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow.
So that's all I'm going to give you for now, but watch this space.
Is that a scoop?
It is.
It is? Okay.
That's some breaking news for you.
All right, there you go. Thank you so much for that. So once again, where can people catch the film? How can they get in contact with you? How can they keep up to date with what you're doing?
Thank you. So the best place is either our website, which is www.thedividedisland.com, and they can watch the film. If they're in the UK, they can watch it on Amazon Prime via their website, or if they're in Cyprus, they can watch it via Vimeo on demand. The link is on the website. But for more information, Instagram is probably the best place to stay up to date. So that's The Divided Island on Instagram. And you'll be able to see where we're coming, new festivals, new screenings, new channels that are showing the film. All the information will be on our Instagram.
Thank you so much. It was a joy having you here. Even though this was a very difficult subject, I appreciate you and your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was a pleasure being here and talking.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.